telemedia can start recording and playing as well. At the end of the meeting, what I recommend is once we adjourn, we'll actually close out of this session. And then I emailed you a separate link for the executive session. So we'll click into that to go into that meeting. Oh, you know what? Oh, Dennis, we can't hear you.
Hurt his feelings. He left.
He's going to have to get a thicker skin.
Bill, since you're here, I'm going to blame you.
No, we're not getting voice, Dennis, for some reason. Could people previously hear Dennis? Donna, I can't hear you either.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you, Jay.
I don't know
Sorry.
why I've come to expect more, you know.
It's been a long day, Jay. Long day.
Tell me about it. Laurie was at her school today distributing laptops from 9 a.m. until 3:30.
I had that duty last week in the rain.
I saw you with your poncho and Tommy out on the sidewalk a little high passing out laptops. Dennis, now your red mute is on. I don't know if that is different.
All right, now can you hear me?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I switched computers. I don't know why I couldn't hear me on the other one. All right,
I don't know.
there you go. Good thing I
So
had two
do we-
computers going.
Are we good?
Are we good? Yep. Want to
All
start?
right, why don't we tell telemedia can start recording, and then I will hit the record button. So as soon as you hear the go ahead, you're good to go.
Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
It being 6 o'clock, I call this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee to order. This meeting is taking place using the GoToMeeting electronic platform. All participation is taking place remotely, not in person. The meeting is being televised and recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia for interested community members to access and watch. Community members were encouraged to submit comments and questions through the school committee members or superintendent of schools, Dr. Jay Lang, via email. These comments will be read under the public participation portion of the agenda. If anyone watching this meeting live has questions or comments to share, they are encouraged to email one of us during the meeting. We'll read those during our second public input session. Well, welcome to the meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. For those who are just tuning in that don't have an agenda, tonight we'll be getting more updates from the superintendent and assistant superintendent about what is going on in the district to assure that our students are safe, healthy, physically and emotionally in receiving educational programming and services despite the unusual circumstance we find ourselves in. We'll also be talking about new timelines for initiatives that we're working on before all this came to pass, including the establishment of a new strategic plan to help guide us in the future, completion of a summary of what the district will be doing based on the recently approved Student Opportunity Act, resubmission of a building proposal for a new high school through MSBA, an update on our work on the district website, and an update on the proposed 2021 budget. We'll also be having an executive session at the end of the meeting to discuss proposed agreements with the various labor groups in regards to new working environments we now find ourselves in. So to start with, we're just going to go around and just do a quick hello so we know who's here. So Donna Newcomb.
Here.
Jeff Doherty.
Here.
Maria Santos.
Here.
John.
Here.
Superintendent Lang.
I am here.
Assistant Superintendent Hirsch.
Here.
Joanna Collins.
Here.
And Sharon. Sharon still with? Oh, yeah, Sharon.
Here.
Recording. Great. Okay. So first order of business is we need to approve the minutes for our meeting on March 24th.
I make a motion to approve the regular school committee meetings from March 20th, 2020.
Okay.
Second.
And I believe it was the 24th. Is that correct?
Oh, did you want to do them both?
Or the 20th and 20?
27th. Yeah. So the 20th and then the 27th.
20th and 27th. Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the minutes from either of those meetings? Okay.
No.
So all in favor, Donna?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And myself, aye, 5-0. Okay, now we're to our first public comment part of our meeting. If any members have received any emails with questions or comments, now would be the time to share them. So we'll start with Jeff. Did you receive any emails?
No, I haven't.
Okay. John?
No, I haven't.
Maria?
I received an email regarding EL.
Okay.
Essentially to make sure that EL students and their families are able to translate and receive the information in the languages that they need. Replied to the email that our website is translatable and how to translate it. And then I received another email that said that, the person has figured it out.
Okay, great. Okay. Donna, do you have anything?
I had several people reach out to me with regards to the plans for April vacation. I know that's something that we're going to be taking up in executive session, I believe. Is that correct?
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
it wasn't, we certainly can chat about it. It wasn't a topic specifically for executive session. If you want me to for a second, we were kind of waiting for the state to see, again, if they were going to have any kind of statewide guidance on how to handle upcoming holidays, whether it be, Good Friday, because some districts have schools, some don't, April school vacation week, things along those lines. We did hear last Friday that they're not going to issue a statewide directive on how to handle the vacation week, and they're basically going to leave that to be a local decision.
Okay.
So we certainly can chat about it. There seems to be two prevailing schools of thought on the matter. The first is that there are some districts where the remote learning is up and going. Staff and parents, find it stressful, and they might like to take the week off and have a break so that they can recoup and get back to school the week after. The other school of thought is that remote learning is up and going in districts. People are finally, kind of getting the hang of it to keep consistency and continuity with the programming. They're making the decision to move forward and teach and learn through April vacation to basically pick up 4 days now and then take 4 days off their calendar in June. So the school committee actually has that option. When we had a conversation on Friday with the teachers union, again, we've been trying to work through some of the details that need to be included in an MOU with them. So that's what we'll be talking about a little bit later in executive session. But we did, that wasn't a point of discussion. They had indicated they were going to kind of do a survey of their own membership on their own to get a sense for where they stood. Rob did call me back today and say that the vast majority of staff who responded to the survey, approximately 85%, were in favor of actually teaching through April vacation and having that continuity and consistency where they're finally kind of up and running and have a little bit of a routine going. So that is a very strong percentage of people that would like to go. I can honestly see it going both ways. If it's the desire of the committee to have that discussion, we can. I think the other thing that we could do is if we wanted to get some parent perspective, we very easily could put together a very, very short 1 or 2 question survey. We could send that out to parents tomorrow with a very quick turnaround and get some data by the end of the week and then reconvene to make a decision one way or the other at that point. I will say, and we'll talk about this a little bit later under communications, when we've been putting our communications out, people definitely are reading them, and they're reading them very quickly. Within about a 24-hour to no more than 48-hour time frame, we're getting, over 5,000 hits on our different communications. So I know if we did do a survey and even put it out tomorrow, I know we'd have sufficient evidence by Friday to basically make a decision. So if the committee wanted that level of input from the parents at this point, we certainly could do that. I just wanted to share with you what the teachers had expressed to me today, and then also that it really is a local decision. So it's ultimately up to you guys if it's something you want to do or not.
Can I
Yeah.
comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Donna.
Donna,
I received several texts about this, not emails, to our site. But a lot of parents, the comments were that they would rather work through the April vacation. However, I personally think your idea of the survey is an excellent one.
I've also received comments similar. A lot of people have been saying they would rather have the days back at the end of the year, but I also agree that the survey makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm all about doing the survey too. I mean, part of my frustration is with just not knowing what's going to happen. As a teacher, to tell you the truth, if I could get an extra week in June of FaceTime with my students, I would love that right now. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I think there's just so much up in the air. So I think that reaching out to parents and having them complete that survey and make a decision by the end of the week, I think would help quite a bit.
When you say FaceTime, do you mean physical FaceTime?
No, I don't mean through technology. I mean actually face to face. Yeah.
I wondered. Okay.
Yeah. No, it really would. It troubles me to think that we may be ending the school year like this, and it's just one of those unknowns at this point. But if I could have that face-to-face time, with my students, even if it means we go a little bit later, I'm in favor of that. I worry about parents having enough time to get things in place for the summer, whether it be childcare or summer programming or whatever it might be, because I have no idea what the status of those things are like. And many parents will be returning, hopefully, to work if we're going back to school, and maybe, I don't know. And to give them that extra time to kind of get things settled would be nice. Okay. But I really think that the decision should come from the parents and from the staff.
Yeah, I agree. I think the survey is a good idea.
All right, so why don't we take this up under new business and we'll kind of come up with a plan in terms of the timeline where, how much time we want to give the survey, and then kind of schedule something that we can meet then and make a final decision. So we'll bring that up again under new business. If that's okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody else, any other comments from the public? I got the same emails that Donna and Maria got, John, so I think we're all on the same page there. Okay.
Dennis,
yeah.
I don't know if you want this. I mean, this is another something that I received on the meals program.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that the Harrington drop-off is from 9 to 12 on Wednesdays at the back door. That they're looking for staples, food items, things that pasta, things like that. The staples that you would have in your cabinets. Also diapers size 1 and pull-ups size large, or just, they weren't really sure, but large or a variety of pull-ups would be very helpful.
Okay. All right. Anything else on public comment? Okay. All
I
right.
didn't see.
Move on to new business then.
Great. So I broke up the new business in a couple of kind of memo updates for you. The first was just some general information on school closures. So I'll just kind of run through this for you for the public. But as far as district-wide communications go, I alluded to earlier that we've actually received some very good feedback from parents and staff and community members on the last couple of communications that we put out. It is surprising that, we're up to, over 65,000 views of our first one and over 5,000. And that was really within about a day and a half of our second announcement. So people are reading this. That's why I think if we do a survey, we'll get some feedback and in relatively short order. We did move to the smaller format that a lot of the schools are using for communication. That seems to, again, be very well received. So we're going to continue with that. And I just put a link to the two communications that we published. So it's part of the packet that if the viewing audience happened to be looking at it, they could easily access them. But we're going to continue with a weekly message from me kind of highlighting some of the district decisions and the district status on projects. And then the individual schools and departments follow up after me with direct communications to the families around things that are happening in their own school. So again, just sharing those two with you, very good feedback, and we're going to keep that consistent format for those reasons.
Any thoughts from anybody? Any comments?
I would like to ask, and just to clarify, all of your newsletter and all of your update is definitely translatable on the site, correct?
Yes, so what happens is our newsletter itself goes out by email to families in English, but then on our website, we post each of our communications. So like that's more communication gets posted to the website so that when you actually go to our website and you pull up that particular page, you can select the language that you would like it translated into. So let's say it was Spanish or Portuguese or whatnot. You can pull that from the download and it translates our document for the public. So we're making sure that any of our district communications are getting also posted to the website. It might look a little repetitive that they're in a few different formats, but we want to make sure people see them, and it's also then translatable. Yes, if they want to do that, they can go right to the website and get the translations. We have asked our L teachers to be able to communicate that to their families, and they're really making first-hand contact with the families at this point. So I have not received feedback about that being an issue for anyone, but we certainly can walk them through how to do that if they have any questions or concerns.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else on the communication? No, I just want to say, the communication has been great in terms of, the information there. If you read through the whole thing, you have information on all different aspects, which I think is important. People have questions, and I think that's a good resource for people to get the answers to some of those questions. So I thank you for putting that together.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right.
Excellent. Second item of the evening is a couple of the departments that, we received some questions from. One is obviously special education and what is going to happen with service delivery with special education students. And then secondly, technology, because obviously moving to a remote platform, there's a lot of emphasis on remote learning. So I did include in the packet a memo that we had received from Amy Reese, special ed director, that talks about how special education is now approaching this longer closure. I think we were all, kind of operating under the mindset of providing enrichment activities and some re-teaching of existing lessons and whatnot that had happened up to our closure on March 13th. But now that we're out for a longer period of time, we're starting to look toward, continuing the learning process. And Amy kind of laid out here some of the recent directives that they've received from statewide and also federal special education. But in a nutshell, our special ed staff will be reaching out to each individual student and creating, who's on an IEP, creating an individual remote learning plan. So they will actually take a look at their service grids, take a look at what type of services they receive and what type of supports, and figure out how for that individual child those services and supports will best be able to be met during this extended closure. So I do know that this has already begun. Obviously, we have a lot of students in the district, so it is going to take a little bit of time to get everyone up on a plan and to get them meeting. But I can report that, as early as this week and even last week, it's a little bit more structured this week. There is instruction starting to take place with special ed groups, small group instruction. So that is ongoing. But I just wanted to relay that to you because we had received mixed messages again from the state and even the feds early on about exactly what special ed services were going to look like during this closure. But they've certainly moved towards providing the very best and accessible services we can, realizing that like with our regular education students, nothing is going to replace direct classroom instruction or face-to-face instruction. But we're going to try to make the very best of this time and continue some learning and progress for our students so they're not that much further when we actually do come back to school. So Amy had provided that link, and then in our communications going forward as well, if we receive different communications or links from either Mass DOE special education or the federal DOE special education, we'll contain those links within the communication so people who have an interest in that particular area can dive a little bit deeper into it. But look for that in future communications to follow.
Okay. Anybody have a question on special ed before we move on to the technology part? Donna?
Just I wanted to mention that I know that Amy has been working collaboratively with CPAC in order to be able to make sure that there's a lot of really good information for parents on the CPAC page on Facebook. So I would encourage people to check that out. CPAC has really taken a lot of time and put in a lot of effort to make sure that there's really valuable information for parents up there. And again, I want to highlight that this is not only just for special education parents with students with special needs, but also that there's a lot of really good information for parents with general ed students as well. And the only other thing I wanted to highlight, and Amy highlighted it in her memo, is that communication is going to be key. So I think that if parents are struggling with delivering the academics through the remote learning, that it's important that they reach out to the teachers and the liaison in order to be able to express their concerns and get some strategies for how to best help kids, or redo whatever the lesson is in a way that allows kids to be successful. You don't want to end up with a bunch of really disheartened, discouraged kids at the end of all of this who now hate school because this is just not an ideal set of circumstances.
Yeah, I think particularly for the younger, obviously the younger students, the teachers are having a lot of direct contact with the parents to talk about what the learning will look like for their students. And obviously as the students hit middle school and high school age, the kids can be a little bit more independent with their learning and assistance from the SPED teacher, but that is actually happening a lot at the elementary level, that the parents are really playing a critical role in this. CPAC certainly has been supportive and been working with Amy to put out information and supports to families. So I really do feel like everyone's trying to come together for the very best during these difficult times.
Anybody else on special ed questions or comments? Okay, great.
On technology, this obviously has been a big lift for us over the last month or so, kind of gearing up for remote learning, putting devices in teachers' hands that didn't necessarily have it at home, students' hands, helping to triage and really get up to speed on technology. I asked Bill to join us, so he's with us today, just to talk about some of the analytics that he can report on over the last week or two, to just show you some of the tremendous use of the different products we have in the district, whether it's Google Classroom or some of the different software programs we do. So if you don't mind, I'll ask Bill to kind of walk you through his document and highlight for you some of the pretty significant use in a very short time period that we've been experiencing for our staff and students. So Bill, can I turn this over to you?
Yep, absolutely. Y'all can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I know this won't be on the screen, but it's in your packets. And we'll just kind of go through the ones that you have in front of you now. and I'll make some comparisons for you. But I think one thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is just a couple of weeks ago, there were just a few grade levels that were doing anything with Google Classroom or any type of online learning whatsoever. And what you've seen transpire in just a few short weeks is basically every other grade level and every other teacher setting up some type of Google Classroom to be able to disseminate information out to kids and parents. And it's been really something special to witness. So what I'll just take you through a couple of the high points here. As far as Google Classrooms themselves go, we were running kind of steady around 500 classrooms throughout the year. At the end of last week, we ended at about 1159. And then the end of this current report that you have, which runs through April 2nd, we're up to nearly 1,300 Google Classrooms. That's a significant increase in usage throughout the district. Looking at posts that are going into classrooms, teachers throughout all last week from 3/27 through 4/2, they were averaging probably around 1,300 or 1,400 posts per day, with a sort of high point of 2,700 new posts into classrooms. And those are basically all the assignments that the kids can go and interact with, download, complete, and then turn back in through Google Classroom. So again, phenomenal. The third piece is kind of the biggest shocker, and this shows you how kids and teachers and parents are all kind of working collaboratively here to get information out and get information back to classrooms. What we had was 76,000 new files, almost 77,000 really, new files added to the Chelmsford Public Schools Google Drive. So that's some stuff going out from teachers and then a bunch of things coming back from students and parents. It's a significant amount of file transfer. And it's just, like I said, it's something to behold, knowing where everyone was just a couple of weeks ago and then seeing things like this unfold in front of you. It's just amazing. And then finally, I'll just talk about a couple of the additional curriculum tools that we use. iReady is a big one for us. We use that for math and for ELA. And that does a couple of things for us. We give diagnostic tests with that throughout the year. And then the program prescribes a pathway for each student individually. And that will do things like figure out what standards students may have struggled with in the past, and it will give them lessons that try to fill in some gaps in standards that they have difficulty with. And then it will also take them on to current standards in their classrooms. So this is an instrumental tool, and I'm glad to see that so many people are using it. We actually had over 8.3 thousand, I think, logins to that platform last week, and it's super. So the company recommends that you get 45 or so minutes per subject per week, and what you can see with the data I've provided you is that we have about 60% of kids that are doing between 30 to 50 plus minutes of time on that platform and doing a good job passing lessons as well. And then finally, just a couple of other tools. Most of our curriculum tools are found in what we call the Clever portal. So kids just log in one time, and then they can click into a wide variety of programs at their grade level, and it logs them into the platform automatically. But we kind of just look at how many logins we're seeing by students. So things like RAS Kids had over 1,000 distinct logins last week. BrainPop had over 3.5 thousand, and we also had BrainPop ELL, and that had over 200 logins last week. FOSWeb for Science had over 1,000. IXL, which is Math, English, and also Science and Social Studies were just added. That had over 2,000 kids log into it. And Keyboarding Without Tears, we use that primarily in K-4, and it's a typing program. that had about 1,000 logins. So it's an unbelievable amount of work that kids are doing, unbelievable amount of work that teachers are doing, and it's fantastic. And the final piece that I'd like to close with, because I would like to at least recognize my folks. They're working really, really hard, and we get an awful lot of tickets every single week. Our normal week when we're in school, we see somewhere around 175 to 200 tickets. 2 weeks ago, we fielded about 400, and then this past week, we were up to almost 500 tickets. So everyone is working very, very diligently and trying to get back to everyone as quickly as possible. And I thank my department for everything that they're doing to support learning.
Anybody have any questions about technology?
Yeah, Bill, the feedback from parents has been very positive and very complimentary of you and your department. I know that there's been a lot of questions, and time and time again, I hear if you reach out to technology services, they'll help you. They've been really great. So I just want to thank you for everything that you and your department has done.
Maria had a question?
Yeah.
Maria?
Is it
Yeah.
my turn? Okay.
Yeah.
So Bill, echo that. I think it's been amazing. Question for you on EL students. Let's say they have a question and they reach out to you for technical assistance. Do you have any problems with communication on that at all? And do you get direct questions from them?
We've had a couple of EL parents reach out. Typically, there's been someone in the family who we can communicate with. So I haven't had to, try to have any translations done or anything like that. I think the biggest thing we've dealt with is actually trying to assist them working with the company to get them internet at home has been really what I've kind of been involved in. And thankfully, there's some resources out there from Comcast and a couple of other companies, and they're posted in several languages. So I've actually gone to even texting with some folks and just sending them links, and then they can translate on that site.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
John, you had a
for making
question?
all those extra efforts.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, just a comment. So I've also gotten a lot of really good feedback, especially about the technical support team. So just kudos to them and their work. Parents that have had problems, not everybody is IT proficient. So it's good to have resources like that. So I appreciate the work, and just pass that along, please.
Certainly
Yep.
will, thank you.
Yeah, it's the same thing, talking to neighbors, teachers and everyone's doing so well, just getting these difficult situations, getting the information across to the kids. The technology's been set up well, and everyone's doing a great job. I just wanted to mention that it's very positive what I've heard in the community, from a social distance, of course.
Bill, any security issues? I know with some of these other platforms like Zoom and all that, there's a whole bunch of issues going around about security and people fooling around. Any issues on our end?
We've tried to steer away from some of the tools that have shown to have some weaknesses like that and some security issues. We're trying to stick with everything Google, really. They have a special end user license agreement for schools that has a lot of privacy and protection components built into it for our students. That's not to say that something couldn't happen, but I think that that's our best shot. So we've stuck with that, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that so far. And then just always reminding students that we need them to act as they would act in school, and I think teachers and administrators have done a really good job with that, and we really haven't heard too many issues at all.
Good, great. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Continuing moving down the list of updates. Third was just some scheduling changes and programming. Nothing significant has really changed at this point, but I just wanted to highlight that for you. So schools are still going to remain closed up until May 4th at this point in time. We have not received any guidance for what's going to happen beyond that. I can tell you that the superintendent group is really urging the commissioner of the state to make some decision well in advance of that date so that people can plan accordingly. But we still do not have anything at this point. So all schools will remain closed through May 4th. No new updates for you on out-of-state, in-state travel. That obviously is all closed now through June 30th. We've also extended school closures for any kind of gym rental, auditoriums, the PAC, things along those lines at this point right through May 17th. So any of the different groups that have been renting our fields, turf fields, our PAC, Mccarthy Auditorium, things along those lines, they have all been contacted to let them know that their rentals are canceled, and we're in the process, if we haven't already, of returning any kind of deposits. Obviously, we're not going to keep money for something that they didn't use, but there's just a little bit of a processing time on that. But at this point, we're out through May 17th. And the last official communication we received from the MIAA as far as athletics goes indicates that if we are able to come back to school in spring sports is able to have an abridged season beginning on May 4th, that they would try to conclude the season by June 27th. I know there's been a lot of discussion about if they can get a season in, what they would do is focus on primarily like a shortened MVC type season. We wouldn't be playing a lot of out-of-conference games, but trying to salvage the spring season for our athletes and coaches. We have a lot of coaches that look forward to it as well. But that's the latest we have on that. As of this point in time, that is also off through May 4th. So just wanted to provide you those scheduling updates to keep it fresh for everyone.
Any feedback yet from the state on MCAS? Are they still hemming and hawing on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening at this point, but it's tied up in the legislation right now. We're hoping to get some movement this week. It is part of a package that basically went to the legislature to grant the commissioner the ability to basically not have MCAS for this spring, but it has not passed yet. We were, I think, hoping that we were going to receive something last Friday, and it still hadn't gotten out of the, I believe it was in the Senate. It hadn't gotten out of the Senate yet. So we're still hopeful this week that that will happen. Quite honestly, for all practical purposes, going back May 4th is going to make it difficult, nearly impossible, to have MCAS at the elementary and middle school level. We just don't know what they're going to do about the high school. But my assumption would be that it would all be canceled when all is said and done.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions scheduling wise? Any thoughts about end of the year activities, proms, graduations, senior activities?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I really do. I feel very badly for the high school seniors in particular, because, you know, they've waited their whole careers for this, and May and June are very busy months for them activity-wise. Dennis, you referenced the senior week activities and prom and graduation and all of those type of events. I also feel very badly for the teachers in the district who are retiring this year, because you know, they finished a long career, and, you know, we're hoping to have a nice spring and go out on a high note. And to think that they may have to end it online is just different than being in a building supported by your colleagues and students. So I do feel particularly badly for those two groups of people. But no, at this point, there have been a few venues that have actually reached out and canceled different activities. My personal opinion would be that, you know, we try to do something for the senior class. We are looking, and I'm going to meet with the high school later this week, about possibly securing some later dates in June as backups for, say, a graduation or a prom, things along those lines. I might have more information for you when we get together next on the 21st. But we're trying to kind of have a plan B for some of those activities so that our kids can participate if we're able to do so.
All right, anybody else? Maria?
Say something on that. I've heard from a lot of parents about, you know, the end of the year activities. And I think the number one thing for them, of course, as it would be for us, is safety first. And then secondly, would be to give them something that's a good memory going forward. And of course, the greatest concern that I've heard is if we do anything that means after the summer, let's say, and it's not before the end of the year, then of course that leaves out a lot of people possibly. So those are the concerns I've heard and the comments I've heard. Okay, and the communication from Mr. Murray have been excellent. I have personal experience with that, of course, because I get them from the high school, and they have truly been excellent. He does answer what he knows, and he says what he doesn't know, which is really important.
Right. We're going to be in a little bit of a no-win situation on that. And, we're not going to be able to make everyone happy if we have to start moving dates around. But we're just hoping that if we can advertise some backup dates, some, kind of rain dates for some of these activities, at least people will have a chance to accommodate their schedules. I'm well aware we're going to get some feedback and some pushback on some of it. But, I am concerned that even if we move, say, the graduation from early June to late June, what if we're still not available to hold it? Do we try to secure a July date? You're going to make some people happy, some people unhappy. They're going to be on vacation. When you start getting into August, you talk about kids going off to college. So again, I just don't know what we do at this point in time, but I do know that people are reaching out to try to secure some backup dates, and we're going to try the very best we can to have some plans, and in the very near future be able to advertise that to the public so that they can at least put holds on some of those dates.
Any other questions on that, Donna? Yeah.
Just with regards to things like the prom and whatnot, a couple things. One is I think that the Chelmsford High PTO is looking for some direction too, because their big thing is the after prom breakfast. And this is what they work all year on. So, I think that obviously a lot of the work that they would have been doing should be happening now. I think that they just need some direction at some point as to whether or not, that we're going to proceed. I know it's impossible to say. I'm remaining optimistic. I don't know why, but I am, that we're going to make it back to school. And I do want to say this, Jay, if we do make it back to school and, say we had sponsored, we had a prom of some sort, at the high school or graduation at the high school or something like that. I'm actually thinking more prom at this point. I have no doubt that there would be many members of the community that would be incredibly helpful in being able to pull that off somehow. Because I think that people do recognize that this is, a very difficult situation and that they would want to be able to help the kids. So, I know sometimes it's hard to secure a venue, but we do have the high school available to us. And I think parental and community involvement could make it a very special thing if we make it back to school. And as Maria said, safety first.
Yep. No, I don't disagree. And I think if we are able to pull any of these things off, I full well feel the community will step up and do whatever we ask them to do to make sure that the seniors and even our staff are going on a high note as they end their career with us. So I know that will happen.
Any other thoughts on this? Okay, moving on.
Moving on, just wanted to touch upon in my communication Friday to families, we were a little bit more explicit with regard to what the student learning expectations are going to be over the next number of weeks. Again, we were hearing is people just wanted some structure and some definitive kind of guidelines or framework to work within around what, students should be doing each day. And then similarly, we followed up with our staff that Saturday because we've been fielding a lot of questions about, what should a typical day look like? It's one thing at the elementary level when a teacher might have, their own 20 or 22 kids in the class, and they don't have to worry about sharing them with another teacher. But when you get up to middle school level and you have, kind of co-teachers, you've got 2 in the 5th and 6th grade, you have 4+ in the 7th and 8th grade, and then obviously the high school. We want to make sure that our teachers aren't kind of hammering the kids with assignments, that there's a coordination of schedules and time and things along those lines. So we did send a guidance document out to our staff on Saturday with a framework to be working from within the next number of weeks. And we also hit on in the parent communication what those expectations for students should look like. So I just wanted to mention that to you. Obviously, it's a work in progress. This is a document that's going to be amended and updated. It's a little bit of a living document as we start to roll out what remote learning in Chelmsford is going to look like, but that we have taken steps to at least frame the discussion moving forward.
Any questions? Priya?
I wanted to just mention that received a wonderful communication from Mr. Murray. After his staff meeting, he met, I guess, with everyone, including the psychologists and everybody in the guidance department. And I understand that if a student, not special ed or doesn't have to be a special ed student and so on, just a student, had a regular session with psychologists during the week, that they have reached out to the students and set up a session. And I believe they've gone through the parents is what I understand too, to make sure. So that is ongoing, and I think that that's immensely wonderful and helpful to students right now, because if they needed that during the school, I'm sure they truly need it right now. I know that there are many parents who truly appreciate that, and wanted to just tell you that's worked out really nicely for many people.
Yeah, I would just say at all levels, obviously the high school in particular, but the middle school and elementary school level, the school counselors, the psychologists, as you indicated, they are reaching out to families who are on their caseload, trying to make that contact and talk about what type of services students might need during this. I know at the high school also, the counselors have been reaching out to the students that didn't have, say, full schedule requests for next year, because scheduling and some of the regular work that we do behind the scenes still needs to take place. So everyone really has been working very hard to make contacts, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Any other thoughts or questions on this area? Donna?
So Jay, again, I can't highlight this enough about I'll use me as an example. I feel like I'm teaching like flying with no navigation system, because, my navigation system was often the students sitting in front of me to be able to determine, kind of what their space was for, learning coming into the classroom, whether or not they were getting it, because I could see them. And, now because I can't see my kids, I'm just kind of putting assignments up, in Google Classroom, not, and hoping that I'm going to get some feedback. Some of the feedback that I've been getting from parents in Chelmsford is that they recognize that teachers are working incredibly hard, and that their kids, they really appreciate the effort. But sometimes it can be really overwhelming. Maybe the lesson that we thought was going to take 30 minutes ends up taking 2.5 hours. And, it's a lot to manage sometimes when you're, in the home. What's the best way? I'm encouraging people to reach out to the teachers and to say, we did the best we could on this. At a certain point, we were having a meltdown and we just had to stop. What is the best way for parents and teachers to be able to kind of coordinate their efforts?
Yeah, I think if parents have concerns like that, their first line of contact is the individual classroom teacher. I would definitely, reach out to the teacher, whether it's a phone call or an email or whatnot, and just talk about how their student is struggling with particular assignments or the schedule or structures or lack thereof, and have that conversation, because I would assume if one child in a classroom is having that, there might be others that feel similarly, and that you'd want to engage the teacher in the discussion so that they can step back also, because teachers don't have the kids in front of them each day. So they don't see that someone might be struggling with a particular activity that they would have if they were in their classroom at that time. So I think that it's more important now than ever to have the communication remain open. I would definitely push on that front. I think also we really are trying to impress upon our staff to make sure that they're working within their grade level teams and even their teacher teams as you get up to, say, the middle school or the high school level, to make sure that, they're aware and conscious of what other activities and assignments their colleagues are assigning for work, so that kids aren't overwhelmed during this time period, because we're not trying to add extra stresses. One of the things that we would try to be clear about is that for student learning or student activities, it should be about a half of a school day, should be the time that they're spending. So you're looking at somewhere between 3 and 4 hours of time. Obviously, we've told everyone in staff as well, you need to use your professional judgment in this. if in different grade levels or teams or, whatever you happen to teach. If students are, somehow online, elementary wise, we've heard a lot of teachers might have, say, a morning check-in meeting with their staff. So if the kids are checking in with their class in the morning and they're online for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then the teacher gives them some activities to do, and the teacher might do a check-in again at the end of the day to see how things are going. Well, if they're already having FaceTime with that teacher for, say, an hour and a half or 2 hours, that's inclusive of the, 3 to 4 hours of structure or learning we want the students to do that particular day. So it wouldn't be like you're doing all of your online content and then you're doing other stuff offline. And the other thing we have to think about, particularly at all grade levels, but even like the elementary kids, take a break in your day, do some physical activity. You would normally have, say, phys ed class during day, go outside for 20 minutes, a half an hour, do something, play some games, art and music, and try to incorporate them all into the schedule so that, the kids should be working about half of what a traditional school day is. But it's only going to come from communication. If parents are having trouble with kids specifically and some of the stuff that's been assigned to them, definitely have that conversation with the teacher first. If for some reason, there's still issues, you certainly could elevate that to the assistant principal or the principal of the school and have a conversation. But I really do feel like everyone is trying to put their best foot forward here, and that if you have that conversation and fill the teacher in with regard to how students are being impacted by some of the assignments or the timelines and things like that, we've asked everyone to really be understanding and cooperative during this closure, and I'm hoping that they would do that. But it does start with a conversation.
I would say the vast majority of people that I've spoken to are very supportive and very grateful for the time and the effort that the teachers are putting in. And it's very clear from just, the overview of Bill Silver's report that is indeed happening. I don't think anybody is saying that, that they're not happy about the work that people are doing or that they don't think that people have the best intentions. Sometimes it just doesn't work out the way that you think it's going to, though. I have a vision sometimes how it is that I think that the lesson is going to go in my head, but I can't see what's happening at the dinner table. And, so it can be rough. And so I'm glad to hear you say that. And I think communication will be the key.
Okay. Anybody else? Maria, you have your hand up.
Okay, question on that, because again, I'm sorry, I get a lot of VL questions, so I'm going to ask on this. That communication, when you're dealing with parents who don't speak sometimes the English language, I'm sure they're reaching out to teachers. I know that teachers use the translator and so on. I just want to make sure that, and if you can, maybe including it in your next communication out, because it's translatable, just have the points of contact for the EL just listed out so people have that and they don't have to go through the site. Although I think our site has gotten slightly better in being able to find content and find your way to the person. If you just have it in that communication, then that's going to be a point of contact for them or a point of information, and we won't get as many questions. So I think during the regular workday, the student would go to a regular class, so they might have a session with their regular teacher. But if they can't understand something or need the extra help, then they would go to the EL teacher. And there's not that double thing going on, so I don't know exactly how it's working out. If maybe there's a little bit of a report on how that is working out, that might help too, so that people understand what's going on. Just a suggestion for the EL, because I am getting some questions on ability to reach the resource.
Let me give that some thought. I think one of the things that might make sense, because again, like say on special education, special ed staff is reaching directly out to families to talk to them about how to access, say, resources and services. Instead of sending out a district-wide communication, when you're really just trying to target 200 kids and their specific kids, I think the communication might be better going directly from the teachers to those 200 kids and their families, as opposed to hoping that they read the newsletter. So Linda can jump in, or we can talk between Linda and Kelly and I about making sure that the school has reached out to those families and they know if they're having an issue, who to contact. I just think it might be
That'd be good.
easier direct to go right to the families because they're already identified, so we know them.
Because I can tell you right now, that is an incredible team. You have a great team in the EL group. It's just that this is a different way of getting to them. And so it would be good to know that. I love it. Jeff is having fun there. Thank you.
Yeah, I got it
Hey,
under
okay.
control now.
Jay, can you just give a brief explanation of what doing with grading now, like third quarter, fourth quarter, trimester? I know it's in the newsletter, but if you could just kind of, or Linda, whoever.
As much as I would love to, I'm going to let Linda take this one.
All right.
Who doesn't love grading more than Linda? So yes, when we talked to the secondary level, we wanted to have a discussion around third term because quite honestly, third term started on January 28th. So teachers were well within the term to almost be ending. We had just lost about two weeks for the high school, 2.5 weeks for the middle school. So after talking to the union and talking to the secondary principals, we felt it was important that we close up term 3 for students and at least give them those three terms to be able to generate GPA and all of that. So what we had asked the teachers to do is to post their grades current this week after they've given children a chance to make up work or if they had to redo a test, use their professional judgment, obviously make adjustments in their grading if they were doing it by percentages or points to make sure that they accommodated the fact that maybe those 2 weeks weren't going to be in their total grades. And they're going to post those grades. The elementary school, and I think I had mentioned this before, they do trimesters except for kindergarten that has only 2 grading periods. The term had ended, trimester 2 had ended for the elementary school students on the 10th of March. So those teachers had put in all of the information for standards-based report cards and those have already been posted to the parents. What we're doing now is we ended up putting in credit, no credit for the secondary level for this 4th term. And what that means is they're going to be giving students different information, letting them, giving them feedback on all of their pieces of work that are coming in for either credit that you've passed it in, you've worked on it, you've got some feedback, or no credit, right? Because nothing came in at that point. I think what ends up happening for the secondary levels, at the end of 4th quarter, it has to be reported as pass-fail. Those are the only codes that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education actually can identify when it comes to uploading information into SIMS for the students, EPIMS for the teachers. So they'll end up putting that in there. And we also didn't want to affect any of the GPA, so it will not calculate within the GPA for the 4th term. For the trimesters, they're going to be putting in an NA because that is the only code that would actually close out the report cards at the elementary level for K and then 1 through 4.
Any questions on that?
I couldn't have said that better myself.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Linda. Okay, anybody else have any questions on the academic program? Okay. Great.
Next update for you, the 5th one on this memo was just an update again on our feeding program. So that continues at the high school. We're really serving a significant number of families currently Monday through Friday from 4:30 to 6. As this extended closure looks like it's going longer and longer, we're going to take a look at the days and hours of service in the coming, days actually, and we'll provide some updates if we need to. There's been some discussion about tweaking times and things along those lines, but it's really serving families and I think the community well. We received very good feedback on that. And then last week we also received some word because there was a lot of different pushes at the state and federal level to try to open up eligibility for our feeding sites. So Chelmsford was a district that is lower than 50% threshold for free and reduced lunch. Districts that had above a 50% threshold were able to right out of the gate open up sites and actually be reimbursed. So we weren't one of those districts. We were pushing for the eligibility to be dropped, and that did happen. So we actually received word. We don't have an official letter yet, but when we do, I'll forward that along to you. but we did receive word that districts similar to Chelmsford that are under 50% are going to be able to submit for reimbursement for the meals. So while it won't totally offset the cost of the program, it'll be significant to help us. And when all is said and done, we'll be able to quantify what the cost was, what the reimbursement was, and what the net amount for the operation of the program was. And we would hope at that point, maybe we'd be able to receive some kind of state subsidy or some state funding to be able to backfill that shortfall. But very happy to report that the program is up and going, and now we will actually be able to submit for reimbursement, so that's significant to us.
Any questions on that? Good.
Can I
Jay,
have
go ahead.
a question? I'm sure we're doing this, but are people who are staffing, I've heard that they do have it, but they are protective. So in other words, they're not coming up close to the people and they're using gloves and masks and so on. Is that, we're all set with that?
Yeah,
For our
Nancy and the
staff?
food service staff have really worked hard to maintain proper social distancing expectations, proper, sanitary cleaning in the kitchens and whatnot. They've tweaked their whole distribution method to not have contact with people when they're coming to pick up the food. So I do think they're on very good grounds as far as that's concerned.
Okay, thank
I just wanted to finish up with a second piece of this, Dennis, is the, so we have that food program going, and Donna had mentioned earlier in the day how people can drop off on Wednesday mornings to Harrington, non-perishable items. Again, your pastas and, tuna fishes, things like that. And then we actually prepare boxes to go out to homes on Friday of people who are in need of services and some substance to get them through the weekends. So that program is going very well. The drop-off is occurring on Wednesdays. Table of Plenty is helping to prepare the boxes. And then on Fridays, we're actually working with the transportation company. They're delivering the boxes to the homes. So I believe last Friday we served approximately 40 families to help them through the weekend. So that is ongoing as well.
Input, output. There's both people streaming
All right.
right now into your
Any
computer.
other
Video.
questions on the meals program?
Do we have so Donna mentioned diapers, pull-ups. Is there a place we can go for a list of what they need? We're buying
I
things
don't know
to
that there's
go
necessarily, yeah, I don't know that, I haven't seen a list out there, but I will tell you it's, again, anything non-perishable. So what I have
Okay.
seen is a lot of like canned goods, pasta sauce,
Cereal.
tuna, things like that, cereals. Diapers did get added last week as well, but anything that is going to be, non-perishable, I think they're certainly welcome to. They put boxes together each week. They supplement what they might not have, but anything
Okay.
kind of non-perishable at this point.
Okay, so probably people can also make monetary donations. And if yes, where would they go to do that?
We're actually not pushing monetary donations at this point because we don't really have a mechanism in the school department to take a monetary donation. I would really recommend if people wanted to do something like that, that they, purchase food and turn it in. I don't like to take cash, to be honest with you. I know it could be useful, but, that would not be something I would recommend.
But there are organizations in town that are helping out too, right? So can they make donations there?
Well, the Table of Plenty is the group that's primarily helping us. I don't know, to be honest with you, if they take cash. We would have to find that out. I do know that there has been some discussion about, if someone wanted to donate a gift certificate to a local restaurant or establishment. Again, I would not like the school department to be the recipient of that. We would have to find a third party who could take that. But I would really be pushing just the donation of the non-perishables at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anna?
Jay, if you want, the people that are organizing the drop-off can send you a list of items that are desired, and maybe we could include that in our weekly newsletter, if you'd like.
Newsletter? Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll follow up with them.
I'm glad Donna suggested it and not me, because I know it's just another thing to add on, but I think it's really, it would be great.
Yeah, if not on the newsletter, just on the district site. So that way it's just always there too for people, either one. I mean, whatever makes the most sense.
Yeah, because now when you go shopping, you take your life in your hands, literally, and you want to be shopping for the right stuff that they need. I'm serious about this.
And as of this time, the Table of Plenty cannot take cash donations. Just so people know.
So none of us are taking cash donations then. So to be clear,
Okay,
so it has to be some kind of a donated, non-perishable food.
thank you.
All right, anything else on food program? Okay, we're good.
All right, and then my last little bullet, I'm just going to keep as a writing bullet. Was there any vote of the committee needed this evening in public session? The answer is no. We'll just discuss things in executive session later on with regard to status of contracts and whatnot. So that includes kind of our first bullet on the agenda tonight. And then when we move to item number 2 through 6, again, I'm just moving now to the second memo. And these are just some highlights and updates for you. So the first one is most of these are adjusted timelines for different activities we had going on in the district. The first is the strategic planning that we had ongoing. As I indicated, in early March, we had to kind of halt work on trying to finalize the document itself. It's certainly something that we're going to revive over the next week or two once things have settled in a little bit to our new routine or our new normal. And what I envision happening at that point is sometime in late May or June, we'll have an updated draft copy that can be circulated for staff and community member feedback. We'll take the summer to make any kind of modifications or adjustments to that we would like to. And then I see kind of a public unveiling of that 3 to 5 year strategic plan, probably at the time we're going back to school right around September. So that actually might be a nice time to launch the plan, perhaps even kind of reviewing what some of the goals and objectives and our intended outcomes are going to be with staff right on staff orientation day as they come back for the next school year. So that is ongoing. One thing that was hanging out there is we had received some feedback from middle school and high school students about what they would like to see in the planning. So I'm going to actually ask Linda to kind of review some of that data with us, and we're using that data to help inform the plan. So that is ongoing.
So let me
Linda,
just,
I think you should be able to share your screen if you want.
I'm doing that right now. So let me just get this slideshow going from the start. So like Dr. Lang was saying, we were really actually doing pretty well with a lot of the different topics that we had for the strategic plan. We had a lot of meetings that were happening to kind of like vet out what the goals are, working on like the academic goal, definitely the social emotional goal that was going on. Katie Sims and Lorraine Wilson were meeting with me regularly to go over some of the next steps in that process as well. So then, of course, we had the situation that had happened. But prior to that, Dr. Lang and I had the pleasure of meeting with some student groups, which was great. So we had started off with the high school, the student council at the high school, who their advisors are Jason Berlin and Stephanie Gilbert. They're both history teachers at the high school. And then from there, we moved on to middle school, and we were able to work at least with the Mccarthy Middle School students. And they have a student council group as well, and that is run by Shelley Bethel, who is a Spanish teacher, and Tracy Germain, who's one of the health teachers. So they were a hoot. They were really fun. So that was some of the great stuff that's happening. And, behind the scenes, we're still trying to get some of that planning work done because there is a lot of work to still be happening, even though we're going through this whole process with online learning. So going through their notes, and I want to thank Elizabeth Silva. She took some really great notes. I could read hers. Dr. Lang's not so much, but, it was nice to have hers all typed out for me. And just looking for some of the common themes that we're going through for the two different levels. Clearly, the high school students really had, a lot more information to share than the middle school students, but, still some really great things came from it. So just starting off with the high school group, what was nice is they almost like broke it down to currently the freshmen. I mean, that group is pretty much made out of seniors and juniors, but they didn't forget about the freshmen. There was like, I think one student that raised their hand as a freshman. But I think they were trying to stress the importance of like what they wish they knew now as a freshman. And some of the things came up was GPA. They said that kind of snuck up on them. They didn't realize, okay, wait a minute, this is super important, that how I'm doing in my classes and the different levels that I have. They don't realize that that's all going to come together when they're juniors. So it would be nice to possibly help those freshmen out ahead of time. I know it's overwhelming to be a freshman, but to talk about its importance. And then even the course of study, more explanation around the different choices that they have. As a freshman, they don't have a lot of choices that are going on for them, only because a lot of their requirements have to be completed. But within that, it was important for them to express that, they don't understand the prerequisites of work. If you take this course prior to this one, you would need it in order to get in. So they were just saying that even though that they're freshmen, they think it's really important that you go over some of these things, and maybe like a flow chart for the course of studies. Like they don't realize what some of the different options are for them, because they're not stuck in a track. It's actually levels. And so they wanted to maybe, provide some support for some of those freshmen as they come in. One of the other things that came up, we have a really strong mentor program, and they were, talking highly of it. Some of them are mentors. But what they were saying is that there might be some more emphasis on the pairings of mentor-mentees. What was happening is they feel like some of the kids didn't fill out, meaning the incoming freshmen didn't either have a chance or didn't fill out their survey of the kind of student that they are. And they were thinking that this would actually be important to be mandatory, maybe done in a class that they all have, just to make sure that that's complete and kids aren't just at the end, if they didn't fill out a survey, just like, okay, well, why don't you just go with this person, and not really going through what two groups, what pairings should happen. And then they were also saying about, back to a little bit about the academics piece, is what are the different levels for students, how they can be in multiple levels. Like it's okay to have an H class here, but now we have the CP level. So it's okay to be in the CP level and an H level. But again, connecting that back to the GPA and how that affects their GPA. So I thought that was pretty insightful that they took the time to really actually talk about freshmen and not just about what it's like for juniors and seniors. So they did a nice job reflecting on that. And then for sophomores and juniors, they felt it was important to really start communicating that college process maybe earlier with the sophomores, providing them with a meeting at the sophomore level. And then for the juniors, they were thinking it would be important for current juniors and, obviously future juniors to have more meetings. They get one house meeting, but they were thinking that maybe 3 times within that school year would be helpful. And then a review of Naviance as well, even for the sophomores, right? Because that just, again, a lot of these things kind of sneak up on you and happen on you, even though there's all these different, events that happen. But if the kids keep hearing it year after year, they'll feel as though maybe they will connect with them. And then on Naviance, they were talking about the scholarship opportunities, and that should be promoted a little bit more. For all students, they were just saying the independent studies that are available, that it would be good to have some guidelines ahead of time of what that means, what constitutes an independent study. More information around dual enrollment, as we know that that's new to Chelmsford High School. And we had that parent information night, which was great, but they were saying that, it was a morning actually, but they were saying that they would love to have a little bit more information about the dual enrollment ahead of time, and then what the course selection process looks like, because again, it becomes springtime and it's like, okay, let's start looking at course selections. Maybe if they started talking about it in the fall, that would be more appropriate. Couple of other things that popped up for the academic pieces. They were thinking it would be great if there were more half-year choices, right? We have a lot of full-year courses, and many of them obviously fulfill requirements, but if there was a possibility to have more half-year semester-long course, that would be great, and more elective choices. There was specific mention of math and even like English and science. What happens with those levels is obviously, for those departments, is their requirements, right? So there's not a lot of flexibility. All students have to take English. So we only have X amount of English teachers, X amount of math teachers. So they were hoping that maybe there would be a way for more electives in some of those 4 classes that are the have-tos. That then comes down to a scheduling issue, of course. And then for facilities, they were talking about the makerspace. They did ask about, like, are we getting a new high school? Everybody keeps asking us that question. And larger work areas for students, right, where they can meet as groups. We are a very traditional high school with classrooms. So, in the future, if there is going to be any work on that building or a new building, to keep these things in mind. And of course, air conditioning. Everybody wants some air conditioning. So if you could just throw that in too, they'd be most appreciative. Moving on to the middle school students, again, they were thrilled. They had a lot of food. They were very excited to have food in the morning. So if you have food, middle school students will show up. So they actually talked about 5th graders. This was a good mix of students. And they were saying to reflect back of what it was like to come in as a 5th grader, maybe if they had some maps for them when they first come in, and then also practicing with their lockers. That was a very hot topic because that can take a lot of time when you can't get into your locker and you feel all panicky. So a separate session on opening your locker would probably be appropriate for them. And then they did talk about being a 6th grader going into 7th grade, and that is a big transition. They actually go into more of a traditional education, right? So they're on that 2-person team, and now all of a sudden here they are with 4 teachers, and then they have to run around and get to all their specialists. So they were talking about how that was overwhelming for students, and maybe at the 6th grade level, just speak to the teams individually. That was one of their solutions and thought process moving forward, is to actually talk to the teams rather than pull them all together or just for one big orientation. Help them out a little bit more with that. And even, I forgot to put it on here, but I think they were talking about too, having some of the students from 7th grade or 8th grade go down and talk to the 6th grade students to just give them their perspective on it and maybe their reflections. So there was they had some great alternatives for how these things could be better. And then they did talk a little bit about their activities, those after school activities, if there were more options, and lots of talks around pause and clause. And I'm pretty sure that Candy Chase ran that, and when she retired, pause and clause went away. So they were looking for that to be resurrected. So any teachers that would be willing to pull that forward, we could just ask Candy to come back. I mean, I'm sure she's available. And then they wanted some more field days, and they were actually talking about fundraising projects. I know that there's a lot of activity that happens around Spirit Weeks for the schools, and they try to raise money, pennies for patients, all of those things. Mccarthy has Project 300, but they felt like that was a great way to bring the school community together and have kids really working towards one thing. My favorite 2 topics are these 2, which was lunch and facilities, right? This was a hot topic. If we could get some ice cream at school at lunchtime, bring back the deli bar, and then just a little bit longer recess, they think that we could make some huge improvements in lunch at the middle school level. And then, of course, could we get just a little bit of AC for the facilities? And then they felt like they would be okay and they could move forward in their education. So they were really fun to talk to. We didn't get a chance to get over to Parker. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a chance to see them. Dr. Lang, we do owe all of these groups some pizza when we do get back to school, even if it's, September, we have to get some pizza to them because we offered them some food. And again, they had some really good insight for incoming students, transitions, obviously facilities. They were thinking not just about themselves, which I thought was, very insightful, right? Most kids are like, well, this is what I would want happening for me. No, they weren't really stuck on themselves. They were talking about the school as a whole. So that was just the overview of the information that we received from those students. And it was a great time. And we would love to go back and just speak with them, as a group, just on a regular basis, just to get that feedback on a regular basis. I think that would be great.
And I think if I could pull off some kind of like a frozen yogurt machine or something, I could be superintendent of the year.
I'm thinking that could be the case too. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Let's put it that way. It wouldn't hurt. So I don't know
Any
if there's-
questions on the surveys? Maria had a question?
Not a question, but can I make a comment?
Comment, yeah.
And I've heard this before. The freshman mentor program on our high school is an incredibly wonderful program. It is very well done. It really works, and so on. A thought was bringing that also into the middle school level when you're transitioning into that 7th and 8th grade. Think about it, a possibility. And finally, the other comment I want to make is generally overall, the entire year, we've been getting presentations from the elementary levels and the middle school level about their councils and how well the student councils, that is working out beautifully. They're being ambassadors for all the other students, all of these things. And you saw it yourselves when you went to the middle school level, what the greatness of that council is. I think when we had the presentation on civics and history and how that has to change and how that's being taught now going forward, that the more and more relevance and importance we put on the student input and how they can affect their education, the more we're going to help them with really being committed students in the whole process. So just that general comment, I think this for me is great. I've seen a lot of development and growth in this area in our school system over the years that I've been in it. So I really think it's excellent. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 3 this evening, and this is also one of those items that's waiting for the legislation to pass at the state level with regard to adjusting the deadline for the Student Opportunity Act plans that are due to the state. So we had received a communication from Commissioner Riley on March 31st, basically indicating, same with MCAS, that he was had legislation going forward to be able to delay or to not hold MCAS this year. He also is asking for districts to have until May to be able to submit their plans. So we, like other districts, did not submit a plan by April 1st. But what we plan to do is bring you our plan at the next meeting because there has not been a definitive date yet from the state set. So we're going to bring you our plan on the 21st and then review it with you, hopefully have you sign off on it, and then we would be ready to submit it to the DOE at any time from that point once they tell us what the deadline is going to be. I don't want to pre-submit it and then, find out we're going to need to make some kind of an adjustment for next year or an additional resource is going to be made available to us. So I'd rather hold on to the plan for as long as we can before we have to submit. But we're going to bring you the draft and have you take a look at it and hopefully approve it at your next meeting. But we don't have a definitive date on when they're going to be due yet. That's tied up in the legislation that's in, I believe, the Senate at this point. So just wanted to share that with you. Any questions on Student Opportunity Act?
Yeah, I have a quick one. Is there any chance that the funding levels will change as a result of all of this?
Yeah, why don't we talk about that in the budget process?
Okay, sure. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I did want to touch on that, but I think it almost makes sense to do it there if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
Item 4 on this list was just an update on the MSBA. So this is a new hard date. The SOA date had gotten moved from April 8th to March 6th. So that bought us a little bit more time to tweak our application for the school building program at the high school project that I'm refining. So I do anticipate bringing that forward to you at the next meeting as well on the 21st, having you review and approve that. Once the school committee approves it, we'll put it on a board of selectmen or a select board meeting. They would ultimately approve the submission, and then it will go into the MSBA by the May 6th deadline. Any questions on MSBA statement of interest? Okay.
No.
Moving on. Just a little update for you on some of the work that we're doing with the website redevelopment. We have had a couple of working group meetings to take a look at our existing website, to take a look at the options there. If we wanted to stay with, we use Blackboard. If we wanted to stay with Blackboard, use a different template and redesign and redevelop our website. We then had, I looked at some different vendors. We brought a vendor in to take a look at what it would be like if we actually started from scratch, use a different platform and build out a new website. So we're working with that particular vendor right now to try to finalize a scope of services to look at to do it that way. And I hope to have some more definitives to you. We had a couple of elements that need to be ironed out before we would actually engage in a contract with the firm. One of them is obviously making sure that our website is ADA compliant and whatnot. So we need to make sure that they can build it that way so that it's a valid proposal to be able to look at before we enter into a formal contract. They're also going to be giving us some mock-ups of what they envision the site possibly looking like based on some feedback that we gave them. So I do hope that within the next couple of weeks, we have some final decisions for you on that front. And once we actually either way stay in-house or we go with an outside firm, we're looking at about a 6-month time frame. So I think this, similar to the strategic plan, will be ready to launch right at the start of the school year. So I think we'll be looking around September, and when the kids and the staff come back, to be able to do a formal launch of the new website at that time as well. Any website questions for you?
Can I make a comment though?
No.
How important the website is, especially right now at this moment. And I'm glad to see us doing this. I've enjoyed all those meetings.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot of work, but I do think in the end, it's going to produce a really nice product for us.
Anybody else? Questions? Great. All right, next.
All right. Last thing for me is just an update on the budget process, and I'll touch on Donna's point in a second. So we actually had as you know, the budget process begins in the fall for us. In early January, late January, early February, we presented a recommended budget to the school committee. It was a $2 million increase over last year. The school committee held the budget session at the end of February and approved the budget after we went page by page through it. So then the school committee's approved budget moves forward to the next step to the finance committee for the town. So we always meet with a subcommittee of the finance committee, and Joanna and I did do that on March 12th. So we met with 2 representatives of the finance committee. We go through our whole budget very similarly to the way we did at the public meeting. The individual members asked questions, asked for additional information, whatnot, had a very good dialogue, and we were scheduled to go forward to the full finance committee on Thursday the 19th. Obviously, that's the week that craziness kind of happened, and all of the town board meetings were canceled at that point. And I don't know that the finance committee has actually started holding their sessions again. So we're kind of in a holding pattern at this point. I don't have any concerns over our current document or the presentation that we'll make to FinCom. We're just waiting for a date. Town meeting has been pushed back. So town meeting is officially now not going to be Monday, the 27th of April. It got pushed back to Monday, January 22nd. Not January, June. June 22nd. So it's going to be right at the end of the fiscal year. That presents a couple of issues for us, and I have had communications with Town Manager Cohen. Likely over the next month or so, we will probably hold the tri-board meeting to allow the select board, the school committee, the finance committee to be in the same room at the same time to kind of hear about information. In my last conversation early as yesterday with Paul, we're both recommending going forward with the budgets that were presented. The one little hiccup we're going to have is in the capital budget, and it's around timing. So typically, if the capital budget is approved in April, we're then able to go out and issue bids and secure services that take place in the schools over the summer. We only have an 8 or 10 week time period during the summer when kids aren't in school and staff isn't there to accomplish a lot of projects. And this coming summer, we had 2 major projects. There's always some stuff you can do behind the scenes, but we had 2 major projects. One was a total redesign and redevelopment of the Parker Middle School kitchen, which basically includes a total kind of gut of all the existing space, total renovation, new equipment, piping, electrical, plumbing, the whole deal. That obviously could not happen during the school year if we can't get that done this summer. Second was the Mccarthy Middle School Auditorium renovation. There's a significant lead time in the chairs. So you have to order your chairs 12 to 14 weeks out to be able to get them in for the install. So at the Parker Kitchen, the one item that has significant lead time is the service lines. So that's an element of the project. So we would not be able to wait until June 22nd to get approval for those two elements of the projects to be able to get them done this summer. So when we meet as a group, what we're going to actually do, Joanna and I and Brian, we're going to pull out what the cost of the chairs would be and what the cost of the service lines would be to see if we could recommend moving forward with those two purchases this spring and basically securing those purchases through our existing funds if we had to be able to then wait for town meeting in June. We feel that they'll look favorably upon these projects because this has been a long time coming. I don't think these are surprises to anyone. That would still allow enough time for the projects to be concluded this summer. We just would not have enough time if we waited to June to then be able to release the order for the chairs and the service lines. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be pulling together those figures so that we can ultimately have a meeting and talk about how to strategize moving forward at the end of June with the capital budget. Questions on capital budget before I talk about operating budget? Is that kind of?
I think I do, but I want to hear, can I hear about the operating budget first? Is that okay?
For you, Donna, sure.
Thank you.
So when it comes to the operating budget, again, we're going to continue recommending what we're recommending, our $2 million increase for next year. We're going to have to start now with a hiring process and whatnot because we can't get that far behind the eight ball and wait until the end of June for approval. Again, Paul is recommending the same on the town side. I do believe at the state level, the state is going to be updating the revenue projections, which they use to figure out what your Chapter 78 is going to be, what your local aid is going to be on the town side. I don't know how much that's going to be affected next year. I don't think any of us do at this point. It is likely the state will tap into their rainy day fund to provide a bridge during the current year. I don't think if we're on the verge of a recession or any kind of major setback, I don't think the legislature is going to want to compound what's happening in the private industry with some kind of a public sector setback. So I think we're going to be okay next year. And I say that because we're fortunate and unfortunate, but in this particular case, fortunate that we don't actually receive a lot of our operating budget revenue from the state. So of our $2 million increase, only $150,000 was coming from Chapter 70 because we're a net minimum aid district. So we're only receiving $30 a student. I think some of your other larger districts who rely more heavily on Chapter 70 potentially could be having some significant cuts. I don't know how much further they could possibly cut us because they're at minimum aid. But again, if our aid at the state level is only $150,000, I don't see that being significant for us. What Paul is watching on the town side, and I agree to this, we're going to have to watch taxes, meals taxes, hotels taxes, excise taxes, could be affected a year or so out. I am more concerned for our own purposes for what the budget in fiscal 21 is going to look like. So next year when we start to put the budget together for the following school year, I think that's when statewide you might see some shortfalls, or you might see them not being able to rely so heavily on, say, the rainy day fund. And you might end up having municipalities have to make some financial adjustments at that point. It's not that I'm not concerned about the budget year that's going to begin July 1, 20. I'm actually more concerned about the budget year that's going to begin July 1 of 21. And again, that's just from some of my experience, even back to the early 2000s, 2008, 2009, similar type situations were happening with some volatility in the economy. Typically, municipalities are a year behind on a lag. So when you're going into tough times, you're a year behind. It takes you a year longer to get out of them. I'm more concerned about 22 than I am 21 at this point. But I do think this is all worth having a conversation with the select board, the finance committee, and the school committee at the same time as we approach town meeting for the end of June. So I don't know, Donna, if I touched on
Yes.
what you were thinking or,
Yes, well, that was exactly some of my concern was, I mean, I understand that, this is actually, one of those times where Chelmsford may benefit because we're so self-sufficient in terms, of our funding. But I am concerned about the, the revenue that the town will have available, going forward because of our current circumstances. And so I understand what you're saying about, picking up the cost of the chairs and the lines for Parker and McCarthy in anticipation that town meeting will vote that capital budget in. But I don't know that I don't know that they're going to do that. I'm concerned that they will take a look at, look at over the course of the next year what may be coming and may want to, maybe streamline some of the costs. So I don't know. That was my only concern.
yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but that's an unknown at this point.
Right.
I think what I'm hoping to do is be able to at least bring those costs forward so that we can have that discussion at that time. And
Right,
then we
okay.
to decide, is that something that we want to take? Because there's a risk we'd be taking. Is that a
Okay.
risk we want to take? Is it not a risk we want to take? But we just need to be conscious that if we don't say take that risk, then we can't expect those projects to get done this summer, even if the funds are allocated in June. People
Right.
just need to be realistic about the expectations because some of these projects with lead time would not be able to be done if we weren't able to acquire some of the materials and supplies earlier on.
No, I completely agree, and I understand that. I am very worried about 2022 in terms of what's going to happen, and I just want to make sure that that we're setting ourselves up going into 2022 without having to look at do anything major, to our budget or to our system.
So I wholeheartedly agree. And I mean, unfortunately, I've been through this before. So we want to take the necessary steps so that we're out in front of this.
Right.
My concern really is 22 at this point. I think 21 will obviously be tighter, but this is going to be a multi-year project, a problem for us. It's not going to be just a one-year problem.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, has any thought been put into looking ahead, like financially, academically, infrastructure? What happens if something like this happens again in the fall?
Why do you have to go there, Dennis?
I'm just being realistic. You
It's
know,
real.
Linda's shaking her head. This can't happen.
sorry, Linda.
This is really making all districts, kind of think about other options for, if this does happen again, as crazy as it sounds. I think what we need to do is obviously get through this time period, whether it's May or June or July, whenever we get back to some kind of normal. Be able to do the very best we can right now dealing with this situation. And we're in kind of crisis management mode at this point. So we need to continue with that. Once we can step back, we can then go and assess what really worked well, what didn't work well. Do we need additional technologies? We were doing the one-on-one initiative. If this had hit us, 2 years from now, instead of having 25% of our staff and students have computers from 5th to 12th grade, we might have had 50 or 75 or 100% of our kids have the technology. And I think that is definitely going to change the conversation because if you remove that barrier, then you're really just talking about the actual remote learning that can take place. I do think one of the things that is going to come from this is, teachers have had to move to kind of a remote platform. They've had to get up on Google Classroom probably a little quicker than they had anticipated. And we're going to be able to kind of work those kinks out. If I were teaching right now and all of a sudden I had to set up all of this technology and I'm starting to digitize my curriculum and I'm learning, what aspects of it kids are really taking well to, which they're not taking well to, I'm going to change my teaching going forward, but I'm probably going to see, more use of technology in the years to come in some of these products. So we want to see and take the very best that we have and then create a plan, unfortunately, if we do ever have to implement something like this going forward.
Okay.
So, and that is going to have budget implications.
Right, that's why I asked. Okay. Anybody else questions on the budget?
Can I
Someone's
make a
dog-
comment on the implications?
Sure, Maria, go ahead.
Okay, so my my thought is, it's been fascinating to me to see the number of people who actually do have access to the technology. Because in Bill's report, it was not that many rollout of computers that had to happen here out of the total number in the student body. So that was very interesting to see, because many people have talked in the past about the fact that that's already out there, that in our district, it could be very different from, say, I don't know, name any other district that's a big place. Right, Donna? And, you know, it's very different. People do have access. It's a minimal number of people who don't. And so we should take that into consideration too in the future in making some of these decisions. And I'll leave that offline now.
Right. Anything else on new business? Okay, any liaison reports? No,
I
not
actually
even
have
Don. Oh, Maria has one, all right. Go ahead.
Okay, so the two PTOs that I do the liaison for, they have met digitally, like we're doing right now, and they've started talking about, you know, the implications of the end of the year fundraising and so on, and starting to plan for the coming year. And the fact that there is no fundraising going on, but there's also no programs being rolled out, so there's not much spending going on either. One of the thoughts is, how do parents from some online systems, if this goes much longer, of also being able to support other parents through this entire process. So right now, if you had a PTO meeting, parents might come to it, get information that way and so on. At this time, that's not going on as much. So they were talking about that too, and how to develop those kinds of support systems. So for one instance, we know that there are quite a few parents out there in our community who are frontline providers of services, who aren't at home and aren't able to help their children with schooling. And so how can we form support systems to help those parents along the way? Those are some of the things that have been coming out of these meetings, just so everybody realizes that.
All right, anybody else, liaison reports? Okay, any new items? Do you want to talk about the April vacation? Is everybody on board that we should send out that survey and then try to get results by the end of the week and maybe meet again back here on Monday, Tuesday, whatever works?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. I think it's a real good idea.
One benefit of being at home is my wife just yelled down she does not want it canceled, which I was wrong about. So I told her to make sure she filled out the survey. So
One survey result right there. There you go.
Well, why don't I recommend this if it's okay with you? I'll prepare just a very brief 1 or 2 question survey that can go out tomorrow. We'll ask people to please respond by the weekend. Would it be okay if we scheduled a session, just a very quick session, just to take up that item on Monday? And I'm only saying that because the vacation is the following week. So just whatever the decision is, to give people time to plan accordingly. I think if we go too deep into the week, it's going to be more and more problematic for people. But we could actually say, give us the survey results by the weekend. The committee will be meeting on Monday to take up this matter and decide one way or the other. And I don't think any of us want to do anything that's really controversial right now, given everything that's happening. But if there's a really strong, majority of the people that feel one way than the other, I think it's fair to have that discussion because, again, there are 2 schools of thoughts on it. But it can be very quick. I can get it out tomorrow, ask for feedback by the weekend, and state right in the communication that we'll convene on Monday to make a decision, if that will work okay for you.
6 o'clock work for everybody, or is another time?
That's
Six,
fine.
John? John,
Yes.
second.
6 works.
6 works, Jeff?
Yeah, 6 works.
Okay. All right, so let's say tentatively 6 o'clock Monday.
Okay. And we'll just do this one item, okay?
All right, any other new items? One I just wanted to bring up, and I wouldn't even thought about this, but we did get the MASC newsletter
Mhm.
just recently, and they made a good point of for us to remind people to fill out their census, please, because you know, a lot of funding comes through the census, so from the federal government to the state to us. So you know, if you haven't filled it out yet, please fill out your census and send that in. And then the other thing is just a reminder that our next regular meeting is the 21st. So it was originally scheduled for the 14th, because we had our meeting today on the 7th. We're going to go on the 21st instead. So just to remind everybody of that. All right. Any other new business? Anybody receive any new comments or questions?
I actually got one, Dennis.
Okay.
I had a center school teacher, who I won't call out on the thing, but she texted me or emailed during the meeting that she actually has 11 ELL students in her class, and that the parents are actually well informed on how to use technology in the home. That Kelly Rogers and Sandra, the ELL teachers, have been doing an outstanding job reaching out to parents and connecting to them, and really has no issues at this point in time. So that was reassuring to know, and just wanted to convey that during the meeting because we talked about it earlier.
Great. All right. Thank you.
I don't know who that is, but thank you for giving that feedback. That's wonderful.
All right. So if there are no other things, at this point, we're going to need a motion to adjourn to executive session and not return. And then we're going to have to log up this meeting and log into a new meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay. All
Have a
right.
good night, Sharon. You too, Joanne.
Oh, we had to do the motion though.
I know, we're gonna-
Yeah.
Good job.
I make a motion to adjourn from regular session to executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining and not returning to regular session.
Second?
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Jeff,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
John,
Donna or John? Aye. Either
John,
way.
Donna,
Aye.
and me. Aye. So 5-0. Okay. So we're going to finish up here and then we'll meet back in a couple minutes.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
All right,
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Aye, Karen.
Have a good night.